Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at Aram Sheibani, who was never far away from being in trouble. Just weeks after being born in Iran in 1980, the country was invaded by neighbouring Iraq led by Saddam Hussein. It was a bloody war that lasted 8 years, costing hundreds of thousands of lives. After it continued after the Sheibani family fled the country in 1986 and settled in Manchester. It must have been a huge journey at a young age, both geographically and culturally, from the Middle East to the West. But Aram Sheibani made an even bigger journey in the next 3 decades of his life. From odd jobs and dabbling in property, Mr. Sheibani worked his way up through the criminal underworld, becoming an international drugs boss and reveling in the cash-rich Playboy lifestyle that came with it. 4 decades since those early years in Iran, the Sheibani family have been torn apart. Aram Sheibani is in jail, beginning a huge 37-year jail sentence. His parents are fugitives, having allegedly benefited from their son's crimes, and GMP are now gunning for his assets. They believe his case will prove to be one of the force's biggest ever wins under the Proceeds of Crime Act, the so-called gangster tax. And Mr. Sheibani could potentially face even more time in jail if he can't pay back his ill-gotten gains. So much of his trial reflected the difference in how Mr. Sheibani liked to portray himself in contrast to the reality of life. This was even the case as Mr. Sheibani described his early years. Mr. Sheibani said his family were extremely wealthy in Iran, living with servant quarters. He recalled having a chauffeur drive him to school. His father had a really high post in the Iranian government's agricultural ministry and his mother ran a hospital. They left as his brother was nearing the age of being conscripted to the army, he said, but their time in Manchester proved a sharp contrast. Both his parents, who split up, claimed benefits to support modest pensions, and his father lived in a former council house. Mr. Sheibani claimed the family wealth was tied up in Iran and international sanctions restricted their ability to move it. Growing up in the city, Mr. Sheibani found work in telesales and in a takeaway. He made his first foray into property aged 19, buying a house in Holme with the help of his parents. Encouraged by the boom of the early 2000s, he continued to buy properties. The environment around properties was more relaxed at the time, and those applying for mortgages could self-certify. Mr. Sheibani used this to his advantage, beginning his life of crime. As his property empire across Manchester got larger, so did his lies. In mortgage applications, he would variously say he was working as a manager or an interior designer and exaggerate his income. His claims of how much he earned did not stack up to his declared income to HMRC. From 1999 to 2010, he only declared income in 5 of those years, but in that time frame he had bought 9 properties. He would fail to declare more than £3 million. As time progressed, he built up a huge property empire, funneling cash into them and using them to launder money. Mr. Sheibani would be linked to the ownership of 22 properties in the UK as well as in Spain. His property dealings peaked with a deal for a £1.74 million luxury flat in Kensington. He claimed that he would be renting out the property, but it was instead used as his base when he was in the capital. Mr. Sheibani's mother was there when police raided it in 2019. On the walls was art by Banksy and Andy Warhol, obtained illegitimately. By the time he had taken on the property in Kensington 2017, things had changed for Mr. Sheibani. He tried to portray himself as a successful, legitimate businessman whose flamboyant life was the product of successes in property and financial trading. But in reality, his successes were the product of crime, and his crimes graduated from mortgage fraud. From 2010, he was making his way through to the upper echelons of the international drugs trade. So senior he became, a judge said Mr. Sheibani was even close to his very source of cocaine in Colombia. It was a country he made several visits to in 2013 and 2014, while others visit to take a Pablo Escobar tour to walk the same steps as the most notorious drug baron. Mr. Sheibani's visit was for his own foray into narcotics for research purposes. When he was arrested, police found a video of a jungle cocaine production laboratory where kilo blocks of cocaine worth £100,000 on the streets were being created. Records showed Mr. Sheibani would buy 2 industrial presses as well as other paraphernalia associated with producing cocaine. It seemed as though his trips had bore fruit. Mr. Sheibani has linked to an international network of cocaine distribution throughout the UK and Europe. a trade which ruins lives, fueling and providing the backdrop to some of the most serious crimes of murder and extreme violence, but provides others with untold wealth. A cursory look through Mr. Sheibani's phones and other devices which police were able to gain access to highlighted this for all to see. Parties on private yachts with bikini-clad women, pictures taken behind the wheel of top-of-the-range cars, and even selfies of the cosmetic surgery which he had paid thousands for. He couldn't even resist a highlight on his trips to Colombia as he searched for Bogota girls online. Mr. Sheibani's rise through the ranks of the shady world of drugs trafficking provided him with a lifestyle he revelled in. The contrast of his modest early years in Manchester to the environment of his arrest in April 2019 could not be more clear. The £675,000 luxury apartment in Bowden, a converted former church, proved to be a scene of his downfall. Following a dogged police investigation, the game was up. Officers had tirelessly pursued his financial records, making inquiries around the world. With the help of seizures made during raids on the apartments in Bowden and Kensington, they built a powerful case which would help keep Mr. Sheibani behind bars until his mid-50s. He had a £1 million in cash, a £5 million property portfolio, and had lived a Playboy lifestyle most can only dream of. Police have control over much of those assets, including Bitcoin worth more than £1.3 million. Financial experts will now pore over the details of the case to determine exactly how much Mr. Sheibani benefited from his crimes. Criminals who can't pay back the figure decided by the court within a certain time period could be given more time in jail. As he considers life following the bombshell 37-year sentence imposed, Mr. Sheibani may be thinking back to those early days in Iran. His parents, the subject of a European arrest warrant after being said to have also profited from their son's crimes, are thought to be back there. I am in no doubt that they enjoyed a relatively luxurious life there, courtesy of the criminal proceeds hidden away in Iranian banks or elsewhere by them and you, Judge Anthony Cross QC said. With no extradition treaty in place, it seems unlikely they will ever appear in a UK court, despite his world having caved in around him. That may provide Mr. Sheibani a source of comfort as he starts life as a convicted prisoner. So what are your thoughts about Mr. Sheibani, a once wealthy drug boss who lived a lavish lifestyle as a result of his rise through the criminal underworld before being caught and sentenced to 37 years in prison? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.